So what are the kind of, so I have done a safety study, I have done an energy study. Now I know what is a safety requirement, I know what is an energy requirement for my building. So there is an options available, you have an online coating and offline coated products. So how do I know what are the parameters I have to test in the performance of the glass? Like I have a requirement for a safety testing. What is the requirement for a performance glass testing? What are performance I have to test? So ideally you have to test the visual light transmission, solar direct transmission, solar direct reflectance, or which is ideally called, helps you to calculate your shading devices. So these are the 3-4 values which you are supposed to measure for any coated glass, which as a manufacturer is being declared. But again there are laboratories outside where we can send the samples which is being tested to understand the performance values declared by the manufacturer. Plus there are few other durability tests which has to be done for these kind of high performance glasses, which is your condensation resistance test for the coated glasses, acid resistance or a salt spray analysis, which helps you to understand the durability of the testing, and there are some kind of aberration resistant test, because the glass has to pass through a lot of value addition, whether it can be a processing or even after processing. If it is a single glazing, there is a provision for the glass to go through a cleaning process at the site after installation. So do the coatings are durable enough to take such kind of aberration resistance? So these are the kind of durability test which has to be tested before the product being coming out of the factory, but even after it being launched. As a end user, we also have a provision to test these products in the third party laboratories. So there are some portions in NBC refers specific to glass, which is on the fire and life safety. So there is a transparent fire protection and the fire resistant glazing system which is available. So under part 4 on life safety, what it gives a basic direction is, it helps you to understand what are the kind of fire resistance glass available in the market, so that you will be you can make a wise decision in selecting what kind of fire resistance glass I have to use based on the location and the application. So there are some basics like wired glass, which is not recommended to use in a bigger format. It can be a very simple view panel as a part of your doors, because it doesn't have an impact resistance. And it's quite of a banned product in many parts of the world. There are annealed fire resistance glass, where a different material, different basic composition is used to make this glass, or a coating is being used. There are tempered fire resistance glass, where it has the dual property of both fire and resistance to human impact. So since I can refer you to the safety glass requirement for the building, which ideally it means tempered safety glass. So here, if the fire resistance glass can be tempered, then it improves the efficiency of the product. So it can address both fire and it have both the human impact. And there are products in the market which is used an intumescent layer between the glasses as a gel, which helps to resist the fire, or which is going to fight with the fire for the stipulated time of 30 minutes or 60 or 90 or 120 minutes. And even there are now double glazed fire resistance glasses available. So for an example, in your project, it comes as a part of your external facade. Still you no need to compromise on the color or shade because of the fire resistant glass. The fire resistant glass can be double glazed with the current coated glass, so that for the aesthetics it still remains the same, but functionally it going to be a fire resistance application glass. So in case of fire resistance, the key parameter is the glass alone cannot perform. It has to be the entire assembly. So NBC part 4 very clearly says glass or glass assembly or the testing or the test document that I am going to get it as a customer has to be very precisely mentioning few of the details, like it has to give what is the kind of application this glass has been tested for, whether it has been tested for a single door or a double door or a sliding or a partition wall. It has to be very clearly mentioned in the test reports. What are the list, kind and dimensions of hardware used for testing, and what is the profile I have been used for my section, because here the fire resistance glass during a huge fire will have due to the higher temperature, there is a chances of expansion and contraction happens to the glass. So the system I am going to use should have the provision to hold the glass firmly for the entire fire rated timeline, whether it can be 30, 60, 90 or 120 as per the requirement. Then the entire report should carry the gaskets I used, the locking system used, the opening provisions I have has to be listed in your system. So to recap, fire resistance product means it is not one single element, it has to be tested as a system. Here I mean it is glass, frame and all other accessories include your sealant, your hardwares which is part of the execution has to be tested and it has to get recorded in your test reports. So there are three kinds of products available which you call it as stability, which is ideally the E category product, which has a tendency to stop the fire and smoke. There is a next category which is called integrity, which is EW, which has a resistance or which has a provision to stop the fire, smoke and the thermal heat transfer that happens through the glass. We know glass U values are quite higher, and when the glass temperature on the one side is going to be increasing, the heat transfer that happens through the glass, it will be very high. So the second category which has been there, which helps you to even cut the kind of thermal heat that transfer happens from the basic version. The third version, which is called the insulation, as the name indicate, it's a complete insulation. So the non-fire side, even we can have a provision or we can imagine to touch the glass on the non-fire side. Ideally it means it can block the fire, smoke and the thermal heat transfer. So these are the basic three types of fire rated products which has been identified or listed in the NBC or the referring standards, NBC referring standards, which helps you to identify based on the location and the type and the kind of a product you can use. So just to have a small brief about, we have gone through the glass. Similar like in fire, how the systems are important. Respect to the glazing also, the systems are very important because it has to go through a different kinds of a test or the design requirement. Start from the loading condition which the frames are being designed for. Start from the wind load or for the earthquake or for the panel dead load and the live load. So all this has to be designed, has to be considered during the design phase to define the cross section of your members. Or we need to understand what is the deflection and the allowable stresses permitted for both the glass and the frames. What kind of movement is being designed for, whether it has been have a provision to move for horizontal during earthquakes or it has a provision to move vertical during the higher wind speed or during the high deflection of your glass, whether the frame has a tendency to adapt towards it, or what kind of impact resistance the frame also can withstand, what kind of acoustic possibility that can be introduced into the current system, and what kind of energy savings even through the frame, because the traditional box sections are very poor in your U value, but today's there are thermal brake system which is available which can help you to reduce the amount of heat coming in, not only from the glass, even from the system. So to understand glass and system together, again there should be list of testings available. What we have seen in the initial of the section is how to test the glass as an individual element, whether on the processing, whether on the performance. Now I will help you to understand what are the kinds of testing has to be done as a system. It can be the structural stability or the overall energy impact glass and system, what kind of visual values can be measured, resistance to fire, acoustic, air infiltration or the leakages through for air and water has to be tested because it's going to be the envelope of your building. So to recap what we have covered in this section, NBC 2016 has a new section called glass and glazing, which is section 8 which comes under part 6 structural design. So this section 8 which is new and it has a huge detail, it's a vast detail being covered in this. What we have taken you through the session today is to give you the content or to give an idea what is covered into the overall NBC. Very precisely this portion of the session will help you to understand how to design or how to select glass for a building. And then what are the kind of testing requirement for the glass again and glass for the systems, so or the glazing division. To recap again, on the glazing side there is 3 important parameters which has to be understood, which is the light transmission, which is a solar factor, which is U value of the glass. The 3 important energy parameter which has to be understood and identified based on the orientation of the building, window wall ratio of the building or with the occupation of the building. Second is a safety requirement, very important, where you have to understand the criticality of the location, whether it is a vertical glazing, sloped glazing or a skylight or a overhead glazing, or it going to be used the glass floors. Based on the kind of usage or the criticality, the kind of safety requirements are defined. As per the NBC, safety glass means it is called a toughened safety glass or it can be laminated safety glass. So we know the 3 parameters for energy and we know how to do the safety measurement, and then we should be able to be in the position to understand how to design the building for fire resistance and how to select or check or identify the design for structural safety for the both glass and glazing divisions.